episode of the Primate Talk podcast. I am joined by my friend Sankalp Jonna to talk about the world of startups and building profitable SaaS businesses. Having done his BTech from Manipal University, Sankalp started his career with working at multiple startups as a software developer, responsible for scaling up things. Quickly figuring out that he could put his skill set in an independent endeavor and gain more autonomy, financial or otherwise, he quit his job and partnered with one of his friends to dabble with the world of startups and entrepreneurship. After figuring out what they needed to work on, owing to their previous failures which came from their earlier endeavors, in April of 2019, Sankalp, along with his co founder Preetam, launched Superlemon, a WhatsApp communication tool for Shopify stores, and grew it to $25,000 in monthly recurring revenue by June 2020. After a whopping success with Superlemon, Sankalp and his co founder launched Delight Chat, an omni-channel customer support tool which serves as a unified portal for managing support queries in chat marketing, which is also their latest and ongoing venture. In his spare time, Sankalp likes to build open source projects that solves small but recurring problems. Join me to discover Sankalp's entrepreneurial journey and the nitty-gritty of building an online SaaS business. We're live. All right, Sankalp, first of all, welcome to the podcast. I am really excited to have you here, primarily for two reasons. I haven't done podcasting in a long while, at least for 6 months, because life got in the way. So welcome to the first episode of our Back from the Dead series. And I'm also all the more excited to uncover your journey, especially in terms of what you've achieved so far in your business endeavors, and look at what you have in store for us. So the idea with the talk is to take all that you guys have done in the past couple of years, go back in time and try to form a narrative from the timeline in which things occurred, and then get into the specifics, or I'm loosely using this metaphor, but the curvy linears of your journey. So welcome to the podcast, Sankalp.
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. I've not been on a podcast before. So I'm really excited and nervous also. I hope I don't say something stupid.
No.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'll try to do the best that I can.
Yes, you don't have to feel nervous. This is just a casual chat between two friends who haven't met in a long time and just are trying to catch up with each other. All right. So, Sankalp, I'll start with how parts of 2019 and 2020 were about your success with Superlemon, a WhatsApp chat button that essentially enabled businesses to talk to their customers through WhatsApp, which you guys drove to a whopping $25,000 in MRR, which is also monthly recurring revenue for those of you who do not know what that is. And then while working on the same, you guys stumbled upon a problem that had been prevalent in the e-com industry, which is basically the chaos of running an e-com store that businesses were facing. Because of which, the DelightChat.io was born, a customer service and a marketing tool. Through Delight Chat, you're helping brands like Fabric Pandit, Nastasia, Pastush, and my favorite, Sleepy Owl. The moment I heard Sleepy Owl, I was like, oh my God, these guys, I have to bring them on a podcast.
Yeah. The Sleepy Owl thing is pretty cool because we are their customers and they're our customers.
They're your customers.
That's pretty cool.
And I'm aware that a lot of things are going around what you've created, but you guys are a little silent as of now, like kind of playing it low key. So talk to us about what's going on right now.
Yeah, so there's a reason why we've been silent. It's because things have not gone well for us in the past. In the last year, things are good now, but last year we made a lot of mistakes. First of all, we assumed that this market was not saturated, and the competitors that were already in the market were not full-fledged tools. So it seemed to us that there was a room for us to enter and take over part of the market. That was unfortunately not true. We were primarily competing with the US market on the customer support side of things. And we just assumed that if we offered a price that was half of what the competitors were offering, try to make the tool a little more easy to use, we could steal a lot of customers from them. We learned some very harsh truths along this journey. First of all, the US market does not work in this way where they evaluate tools based on the price.
Right.
The way they think is they're okay to pay how much ever is needed to be paid as long as the tool offers them exactly what it's supposed to offer. So that price difference that we had didn't really make that much of a difference.
Okay.
And secondly, it turns out that US market uh, has a very different way of doing things. For instance, we weren't able to we couldn't figure out how to acquire them. Like one example that I can give you is we had this guy take a look at our website and just to tell us what was wrong and why aren't we getting as many
Mm.
customers as I thought we would get. And he pointed out a very simple thing. He said your copy is in Victorian English.
Mm.
An American that would read this would subconsciously know that this is not an American company, it's an Indian company masquerading as an American company, and then he would churn immediately.
Oh.
So when we heard that, we realized that it's not just that, there are a lot more nuances
Mm.
to sell to an American customer, which
Right.
we are not aware of.
Mm.
And we could try and learn all of those nuances, but it'll probably end up taking another 6 months or a year or something just to understand what a American customer
Mm.
is looking for.
Okay.
That was a big realization. And the other thing was we thought we made a tool that was easy to use, but easy to use also turns out to be very subjective.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it all the tools that were our competitors, when you start using them, there's a learning curve.
Mm.
There's an initial learning curve that you have to get over,
Mm.
and then you can start using a tool in a full-fledged way. That learning
Okay.
curve existed with our competitors. It exists with us also.
Mm.
And once you're past that learning curve, it doesn't really matter if our UI is more jazzy and
Mm.
better looking or anything like
Right.
that, because the initial learning curve is the same. So that easy to use was also not a very and tangible thing as we thought it was.
Okay.
So there was a lot of existential crisis going on within
Mm.
the company, that what are we doing? We all our assumptions were wrong. We're not acquiring customers, and the competitor is way more advanced than what we initially thought. Uh, and because of all this, we stopped writing also, because we suddenly we had a lot of self doubt, and we're like, we don't know enough stuff that we start writing and tell other people what to do. We
Right.
haven't figured out our own stuff yet.
Mm.
So that's been happening for the past year. But towards the end of the year, we suddenly got a lot of clarity. We
Mm.
realized that we are competing in the wrong market.
Mm.
We won't survive in the US market because it'll take us a long time just to figure out how to sell it to them in a way that an American customer would even come and start using our tool.
Okay.
Once they start using, you have to convert them also. But the first step itself is not happening.
Mm.
So this isn't going to work out.
Mm.
But then we started looking at with the tool that we already had, which is an omni-channel inbox,
Mm.
where all your communication channels like Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, email, everything is in one place. So it's an omni-channel inbox. What other market is out there that needs an omni-channel inbox where the competitors have not yet made a name for themselves? People are still trying things out, and nobody really knows what exactly the customer wants. And interestingly, we found out that in the Indian market, there was this requirement for an omni-channel inbox tool, which also does marketing automation on top of WhatsApp.
Okay. Mm.
So a lot of D2C brands, including the ones you just mentioned,
Mm.
Fabric Pundit, Sleepyol, and all, they all do their marketing through WhatsApp right now.
Right.
They send promotional messages on
They
WhatsApp,
do. Yes.
and I'm sure you've received a lot of
Yes. Yep.
promotional messages.
I
And
had to block
earlier,
them because they're
yeah,
like
yeah,
invading my personal life. But yeah, they
here's a
do.
little
I'm aware.
secret for you. You can block them as much as you want, but the messages will keep coming.
Okay. All right.
Yes, and because earlier WhatsApp used, if you blog or report, WhatsApp would take action,
Mm-hmm.
but they stopped doing that now. Uh,
Okay.
they've made it easier to send promotional messages on WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
So WhatsApp might end up turning into an SMS,
Mm-hmm.
and we realize that we are just in the cusp of where WhatsApp is still a very private thing for people, but a few years later it'll end up becoming like SMS, and we are right in
Yes.
the middle of that
Mm.
transition. And we
Natural.
realize, yeah.
Mm.
So that's when we realized we should make use of this transition. We should make use of this unique position that we are in,
Mm-hmm.
and then we fumbled, and within a month we ended up building a a basic version of a marketing automation tool on top of WhatsApp,
Hmm. Right.
where people could upload a CSV file with a bunch of phone numbers
Hmm.
and send a promotional message to all of them
Hmm.
without having to do any segmentation or any complicated applying any complicated filters. Just upload a file and everybody in the file gets a message. The moment we did that, our signups have increased, our demos have increased, our MRR started growing finally.
Hmm.
It was stagnant the whole of last year, it didn't grow only.
Okay.
Now it finally started growing. So that's when we realized that okay, there is something here. We still don't know exactly what it is, and we are still unsure of the business economics, because for every message we send over WhatsApp, we have to pay WhatsApp for that. So then we pass on that cost to our customers,
Hmm.
but we also have to make money in the process. So we are still trying to figure out what business model works, but it seems like there is some traction here,
Right.
and we're going to continue to pursue it. And if it turns out well for us, then maybe we'll start writing again.
Right. Okay.
But
But
yeah,
like you
so
mentioned, Sankalp, about the US market, and if in the future you were to expand somewhere, right? I know that you like still haven't figured it out completely, but then what would those other nuances rather than decreasing your price look like? Just on a high
yeah,
level, pointer basis, what would those nuances look like? What would those things look like that people need to focus on in order to compete in a market like that?
it's actually a very it's not a very tangible thing. These nuances are very hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, there's this one tool, I forget the name. Their website copy said something like military grade product or something like that.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So when you say military grade, right,
Hmm.
they immediately form this perception that it must be super resilient.
Hmm.
So you need to use terms like that in your branding and in your website copy. That is
Okay.
one thing.
Uh-huh.
And the other thing is, there's a fundamental difference between Indian market and the US market. Generally, how the US market functions is they are okay to use 10 tools to do 10 different things as
Mm-hmm.
long as each tool does what it's supposed to do very well.
Right.
They don't
Mm-hmm.
care as long as if they subscribe to a SaaS tool that's supposed to do one job, as long as it does that job really well, they're okay to pay extra also for it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're okay to have 10 different products for doing 10 different things. But the way Indian market works is they're okay if a tool is buggy. They're okay if it is not military grade,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. But the tool should do 10 things.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
all the 10 different products which a US person would use individually, all of that functionality should, within some capacity, should exist in one tool
One
only.
product. Oh,
And
okay.
they just want to look at one dashboard throughout their day. They want to do their work on that and go home. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to keep 10 different tabs open.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's another nuance with the US market. If you're targeting the US market, I would recommend not building a product that by definition has to do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, pick a product which only needs to solve one problem really well.
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
we currently have to solve multiple problems. We have our support inbox, we have our marketing automation side of things. Within support inbox also, email is treated in a different way, because email works in the way like every thread is a new email.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a WhatsApp conversation, once you start a conversation with someone, that it's just one thread and that
One
thread
thread.
keeps going on, right?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of nuances, and the product gets complicated very quickly, and you need to be good at a lot of things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So such kind of a product to work in the US market it can happen, of course, people have done it, but you would have to work extra hard to make that
Okay.
happen.
But do you think the geographical proximity, it might seem a little far-fetched, but geographical proximity to that location, if a US would serve better, would help you understand the market better, or it can be done virtually as well, but only with a little extra hard work.
I do believe it can be done virtually.
Mm-hmm.
The only advantage the geographical thing has is the time zone.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be available in the
Right.
night
Yeah.
to speak to somebody from the US and
Mm-hmm.
understand their problems. So if you're willing to sacrifice sleep or hire somebody else
Hmm.
who's going to do that for you, then I think it's very much doable. A lot of people have done it. In fact, sitting in India, serving the US market, making money in dollars and spending that money in rupees, that's the dream actually. That I
Yeah.
would I would say that's the Indian dream.
Indian dream. Right.
Yeah,
Nice. Okay.
and I think it's doable.
Hmm.
You just need to find the right product and the right market.
No. So now, in all of this, Sankalp, you two growing these small businesses, solving specific problems, and facing your own share of challenges, and figuring out how to come about them. I want to come to you and what role you play to provide momentum to things. So, for the
Right.
most part of your life, you've handled the tech side of things, which is
Yeah.
why you're also the CTO of Delight Chat. You love building open source projects that solve recurring problems, writing code, and enabling scalability. So now I'm gonna go back into your timeline. Given all of this, I want to understand when you stood at the end of your college degree and
Mhm.
decided that instead of working for a corporate, you're going to work for a startup. And that's also been covered in your story. Um, Keeping aside the fact that people vilify corporates, how did you objectively compare the two and decide to apply for startups? When earlier on, most people often don't know what they want to do, or they decide to go wherever the current takes them, like yours truly. What factors and mindset enable you to take that decision confidently?
Uh, Actually, I mean, you might find the reason very stupid, but
Hmm.
the original reason why I didn't want to get into corporates is because I couldn't crack their interviews. And the
Oh.
reason being, they would ask questions in their interviews which I can't answer. But if you give me enough time to Google,
Hmm.
I can come up with a solution. But they
Okay.
expect you to answer in that moment.
Hmm.
Whereas when I applied for startups, the model was more like I'll give you an assignment. You can
Hmm.
take a weekend or X amount of hours to do it
Hmm.
in the way that you see fit.
Hmm.
And after you come back with a solution, we'll talk.
Right.
That gave me an idea of how it would be. The interview process itself gave me an idea of what it would be like to work over there.
Hmm.
In corporates, you're expected to have a lot of inherent knowledge, and
Hmm.
you need to know a lot of things. You need to know how to write code to optimize for speed and
Hmm.
memory and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And I didn't know anything about that. I was not very good at uh, like academically.
Hmm.
But my whole point was, why do I need to know that? Somebody who's way smarter than me has already solved that problem.
Hmm.
I can just look at their solution and copy it, right? Why do
Hmm.
I need to reinvent the whole wheel and learn how
Hmm.
to do that? As long as I know uh, in an abstract way what needs to be done.
Hmm.
For example, when you're using an app,
Hmm.
you press a button. You don't need to know what the button does internally right after you press it.
Right. Yes.
So I wanted to be the guy who just presses the button.
Hmm.
And that didn't seem like it would be possible to be that way if I had joined a corporate.
Okay.
But in startups, that you are expected to be that way. You are expected to just take time, find a way to solve problems by hacking together things which other people have already done and stringing them all together like Lego pieces and come up with a
Right.
solution.
Hmm.
And that was much more appealing to me. So that was the main reason why I wanted to join a startup instead of going to a corporate.
Hmm.
There were other smaller reasons as well. Like it seemed to me like the growth would be a lot better at a startup because you would actually be building something that would go out into the real world. People would start using that, and when they give you feedback, good feedback or bad feedback, it gives you this feeling that okay, they actually used the code that I've written,
Hmm.
and now they have feedback, and now it's my responsibility to make it better. You won't get that in a corporate because you'll be a small cog in a huge machine. So whatever work you do would get diluted, uh, I guess, and you won't really know what it feels like to. The stakes would be very low, right? You don't have
Yes.
to worry too
Less
much.
skin
You
in the
just
game.
less skin
Yeah.
in the game.
Yeah.
You just do what you're told, and even if you screw up, your manager will probably review your code and be like, change this, change that,
Hmm.
and
Right.
you're fine. Uh, I guess that would have been a more comfortable route to take, but I felt like that was not the right path because
Hmm.
the growth would just not be there. I just
Hmm.
didn't see that happen.
Yeah, and you did work
Yeah,
at multiple startups as a developer and an engineer, like Greedy Game, Good Box, and Findulum Tech Labs, where you
yeah,
had been handling back end, front end, and sometimes even full stack development with the intent of scaling up things from an infrastructure standpoint. So now I want to capture this, transition that happened around 2017, I guess, when you sort of left your 17 or 20, when you left your startup and then you decided to get into your entrepreneurial
yeah. That
journey.
would be the beginning of 2019, actually.
Beginning of
Yeah.
2019, yes. So, how does all the experience that you accumulated in these 6 years, roughly 6 years, starting from 2014, uh, working with these multiple startups and then spill into you taking up entrepreneurship? How did that experience spill into you into taking entrepreneurship, which was the next
Right.
stage of your life? Was there an epiphany or a host of other micro variables that enabled you to take this up?
Uh, so uh, while I was working for all these startups, it never felt like I was an employee who's expected to do a certain task and go home. It felt
Mm-hmm.
I had this sense of ownership. It felt like I owned that startup, and I worked in that way only.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was already doing that, one day I just realized that I'm already working like I own this, like this is mine, and if the stakes are really high,
Mm-hmm.
might as well start my own thing because I would probably do the same thing there also.
Right.
uh, and if it's actually my own thing, then that's even better because the amount of work I'm putting in is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, especially in Greedy Game, it was an ad tech company, so
Yeah.
the code that I would write literally would translate into money,
Mm.
and I would see the dashboard every day and be like,
Yeah.
okay, what I did made this much for the company.
Mm.
And then it struck me that why, if I'm making money for them, then why is it that the money is going to them and then it's coming to me? Why not just cut out the middleman, right? So
Yeah.
so that epiphany also happened. And regarding the experience that I've gained over the years, I think this experience helped me to start off. So
Mm.
when you're building a new product,
Mm.
there are a lot of variables. And because I worked in a lot of companies before, I knew what was the starting point. I
Mm.
knew how to get off, like uh, the start. Generally, people have this momentum problem in the beginning, right?
Right.
And once you're in the middle of something, it's easy to move forward because the momentum will keep you going.
Mm.
But starting something is hard because you don't know where to start from. What tech stack should you use? Do you want to use it? Should you use AWS or should you use something else? Do you
Mm.
pay for SaaS tools or do you build it yourselves?
Mm.
What open source technologies can you use versus
Mm.
building your own thing?
Mm.
All these questions, which would slow down somebody who's just starting off. I had the advantage of not doing that. I knew what
Yeah.
exactly needed to be done to
Mm.
start to build a product and put it out there.
Mm.
Once it's out there, I actually don't know what I didn't know what was going to happen, what was
Mm.
in store, and how we were going to proceed from there. But this experience helped me get started without too much of friction.
Right. And does that even tie to this particular thing that I think you had mentioned in your story? The fact that none of your family members were entrepreneurs, both you and Preetam. I also want to understand how individuals break through, and I'm taking the liberty to make this term up for the lack of a better word, the
Right, right.
ancestral trend that pervades their lineage. If your ancestors have been businessmen, you're more likely to follow suit. You're less likely
Yeah.
to see a deviation from the norm, like a scientist in a family of, that's been running shoe business. So,
Hmm.
uh, does that also tie to that fact that enabled you to break the pattern? What is that exactly that enabled you to break that pattern?
Again, the answer for this also might be very petty, but I was just being a rebel.
Okay.
My grandmother had this thing that you shouldn't get into business. My dad was in business and he got cheated, and like, no
Yeah.
matter, you're forbidden to do this. And I
Wow.
didn't like the word forbidden. I'm like, now I'm going to do this only.
Yeah.
Uh, that was a major driving factor. I'm not going to say that was the main thing, but that was
Mm.
a major driving factor.
Hmm.
But uh, breaking free was possible because throughout my life, I've only stayed in my house till I was 16, 17, I guess.
Hmm.
After that, I've been away. I went to Manipal to study, and then I moved to Bangalore. So
Hmm.
for the last 10 years, I've not been at home. I've not been around the environment where everyone's talking about a government job or
Right.
keep playing it safe.
Hmm.
Uh, and not. I've been around people. Staying in Bangalore, you're around people who are hustling,
Yeah.
trying to be
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, trying to do something different. So I've only been influenced to that sort of a crowd
Hmm.
for a period of almost 10 years.
Hmm.
So it was not. It felt very natural actually to
Hmm.
become an entrepreneur. It didn't feel like I'm breaking away from the traditional
Right.
thing which my family did.
Hmm.
It felt very natural by virtue of the environment that I was in the past 10 years. I'm
Hmm.
sure if I had stayed at home, the environment would be very different, and then maybe I wouldn't have taken this path.
Yes. Correct.
So
Right.
the company that you are around makes a lot of difference.
Yeah,
Uh,
especially during those years when your brain is still at a formative age, like still,
yeah,
gathering impressions, learning things. So yes,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that makes complete sense. No, it's not petty, Sankalp. The answer makes complete sense.
yeah, yeah. So even like Preetam, my co-founder, even back when we were friends, when we had no plans of starting something
Hmm.
together, we would only talk about the startup world and what kind of products are people building,
Yeah.
what market is slowly taking off and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So it just felt like if not today, if not tomorrow, someday we're going to start something of our own. It's just inevitable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it just felt very natural.
Yeah. So that transition itself, before we capture that, that's what I actually want to touch a bit on what your business is all about. And although you and Preetam have covered it extensively in your blog post, the links to which I will provide in the show notes, I guess we can discuss it enough to acquaint someone who is unknown to the space. And so that, if they have skills or they have, they can leverage that environment that you guys leveraged to, sell your own products in the virtual
Right.
space. But before we get into that, for informational purpose, I'll start with the evolution of software because I thought it's worth discussing the entire evolution of software before we get into this, and then probably you could just provide us a preamble into what that is all about. And I'm going to get
Sure.
into that. You could say the evolution of software started with the introduction of personal computers in the 80s, and it is said that it happened with the entry of Macintosh or Apple II. Sort of led the way for software because people were like, okay, we have this cool technology, but what do we do with it? That's when
Right.
companies like Adobe started innovating in this space. The first instances of software were word processing programs and VisiCalc, a spreadsheet program. So software became a lifestyle. And then fast forward to the 90s, the advent of the internet gave it a boost. Soon, around VCs just handing out checks, sometimes giving people more money than they are even asking for, seeing it as the most scalable entity. Then, the dot com bust happened, and that's just part of the story. So over the time, we see software becoming a business model, and it owes itself to a variety of limitations with the traditional licensing model and certain infrastructural limitations. So SaaS, software as a services, is born, which is nothing but software licensed on a recurring basis, typically monthly, hosted on cloud, and usually accessed via web or a mobile app for performing endless number of things under the sun. But there's more to this timeline, and only recently have we seen micro SaaS in the picture. And since you were one of the first people, you and Preetam, I've heard this from, and think it's still new to the picture, not really old, like still relatively new to the technological, the progress that has been going on. I guess you could give us a preamble on what it is and how you are leveraging the space to build your own businesses.
Sure. So you want me to talk about microsas
Micro SaaS,
specifically?
yes, you could talk about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So microsas, it's a little hard to define it, but I'll try and give you all the characteristics that would constitute a microsas. So one characteristic is a microsas can be typically built, launched, marketed, everything by one single person,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that where the MVP of the product, the first version of the product, wouldn't take longer than a month,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's one or two people working on it.
Mm-hmm.
So finding something like that would be the first step.
Hmm.
Uh, a micro SaaS is generally built on top of some other huge platform,
Hmm.
like we did with Shopify,
Yeah.
so that you don't need to spend bandwidth marketing your product. You can just list yourself on the App Store or whatever marketplace where people are already searching. There's
Hmm.
already traffic coming there, and you're just displaying your product there. That takes away not having to market your product is a very huge thing which we
Hmm.
didn't have before.
Hmm.
Before all these platforms like Shopify came through,
Hmm.
it was not possible to just focus on developing the product. You also had to focus on marketing it,
Right.
finding an audience that needs it.
Hmm.
Now that part has been taken off, which means a developer who doesn't have much idea about how to put their product in front of the target audience, this person now has a much lesser resistance to build and launch something.
Hmm.
So that's another thing. And a microsas typically solves, as the name suggests, it solves one very small specific problem, which generally would not be solved by a very huge SaaS product,
Hmm.
because it's not in the interest of a big SaaS product to solve tiny problems that are faced by a small niche group of people.
Right. Hmm.
So, and that's a opportunity for a developer who's willing to spend maybe 3-4 hours a day just solving that particular use case
Hmm.
and making a few bucks a month.
Right.
But there are some caveats also
Hmm.
to microsas.
Hmm.
The major one being there's a high churn.
Hmm.
Churn is basically people who start paying for your product, but then they leave after a while.
Yeah.
Because your product solves a very small need,
Hmm.
it is unlikely that this need will exist throughout the while. And as and when a business grows, they'll start using a bigger product that's meant to solve most of their needs. And then they don't need you anymore.
Hmm.
So you might get a lot of volume of people trying to use your product, but they would also leave very quickly. And generally, the ticket size or the ARPU, the average revenue per user, as we like to call it, is usually very low.
Hmm.
In our case, with Superlemon, it was about $9. So for a big SaaS company,
Hmm.
it takes 1-2 years just to set up an engine to acquire customers
Hmm.
who will stay with them, understanding their needs and tailoring your product
Accordingly. Hmm.
towards that need. And hence, you may not make any money in the first 1 year or 2 years,
Hmm. Hmm.
but after that, your revenue might grow exponentially.
Hmm. Hmm.
So in a traditional SaaS, you would need a decent amount of upfront capital, or you should be okay with not making any money in the beginning.
Hmm.
And you have to constantly look at the big picture.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you can't keep going, because if you don't see revenue coming in every day, you might think your business is failing. But
Hmm.
you need to tell yourself that it's not failing. You're just trying to find product market fit, and it'll start working after a
Hmm.
year or two.
Hmm.
So constantly having to see the big picture could be very exhausting, and it could also discourage a lot of people from starting businesses.
Yeah. Hmm.
That is not there with microSaaS.
Hmm.
The feedback loop is pretty instant.
Hmm.
The moment you launch something, people will start using it, and if they need it enough, they'll start paying for it. So within a couple of months, you might start making revenue. You're starting to find avenues to grow that revenue, and within a
Hmm.
year, you're a proper, sustainable, profitable business.
Right.
So it's much more, much the short term reward is much higher
Right.
with micro SaaS.
Hmm.
The long-term reward is lower because, like I said, you might experience a
Yes.
lot of churn and your business may not have longevity.
Hmm.
Uh, but i- you if you start a micro SaaS product and you're making some money on the side, that does a lot for your confidence. And now you
Hmm.
know that you're
Right.
capable of building a business. So you might start a bigger business later on, like we
Yes.
did with the
Given.
light chat, and
Hmm.
now you're okay waiting a few years to make revenue because you know at the back of your mind that you've tried the other path where everything's instant and
Right.
you could go back to it if you want to, but you also know the pitfalls of it, like your business don't have doesn't have longevity.
Hmm.
So I
Right.
think it would be a nice transition if your goal is to start a big SaaS company and become like, let's say, like Freshworks.
Hmm.
I would say a really nice path would be to first start a micro SaaS,
Hmm.
see how that goes, and then do this.
Yes. So you could say that the problem of ease in setting up businesses has been addressed. And I think, the companies or these e-commerce marketplaces like Shopify, you could say Atlassian,
Yeah.
these have actually enabled that. So apart from, marketing and ease of setting up business, what other barriers do you think it could have, these marketplaces have actually, mitigated for young or, fresh developers who want to get into starting their own
I
business?
would say speed of development.
Right. Speed of
For
development.
example, Shopify has very rich frameworks
Hmm.
that you can use to build an app within a week,
Hmm.
actually a weekend. The first version of Super 11 was built in a weekend,
Hmm.
and that was only possible because Shopify had this framework called Polaris.
The
It's
Polaris.
a React-based UI framework,
Hmm.
which is like basically it works like Lego pieces.
Yeah.
They give you a bunch of Lego pieces, and you just join them together, and you have
Hmm.
a product ready.
Hmm.
That has made it the ease of development, uh, it's increased the ease of development like anything.
Hmm.
And now the barrier is very low because even if you're not a full-fledged developer, if you have some aptitude for products
Hmm.
and you know a little bit of code,
Hmm.
that is enough for you to build a microservice
Right.
product.
Hmm.
So I think that's a major thing that these platforms have enabled.
Okay. And what do you see people making of this space? Like sometimes you give people a new tool, and you see them use it in unprecedented ways. So like there was this thing that there's an article that I was reading that was on housing, and there's this German architect who believed that people can assemble their own houses, and he gave them
Mm,
tools to do that. And then over the time he just gave them basic tools, and over the time he saw people actually doing very innovative things with that, like the regarding the heating or solar heating of the house, or all those mechanics that are there.
right.
So it's the same with, if I were to ask you what happens with microsas, like you given them a very powerful tool. All right. So what are some of the most innovative ideas you're seeing in this space? Like what are people using it as? Some of the mind-blowing ideas that you might have seen ever since you came into the picture as well.
Um, I think my favorite one is this product called GetRepeat.io.
Uh-huh.
It's not mind blowing exactly, but it was fascinating how they found a way to make more money for merchants.
Hmm.
So what they do is when you order something from
Hmm.
Shopify or any e-commerce store,
Hmm.
if it's a product like coffee, for example, we were talking about Sleepy
Yeah.
All,
Yeah.
it's very likely that you'll order another one of that
Hmm.
in X amount of days. It's not a product that you order once and it's done. It
Yeah.
gets over, you order more,
Hmm.
like shampoo also, for example.
Yes.
So they created a sort of a subscription for products like these,
Hmm.
where instead of ordering again and again, you can just subscribe, pay a monthly subscription.
Hmm. Hmm.
And but many people are doing that, though. That's not the innovative part. The innovative part is uh, they send you a link to subscribe to pay start paying for a monthly subscription
Hmm.
as in whenever you place an order normally, and a few days after the order you're expected to run out of that product, they
Right.
send you a link. When you open the link and you subscribe for you say you accept for this monthly subscription and you go
Hmm.
forward,
Hmm.
before they take you to the checkout page where you pay for it, they take you to another page in between
Hmm.
where they upsell other products to you
Oh.
because you've decide to pay for the coffee subscription,
Right.
they bundle a bunch of other products together and show you, and they say, hey, you might be interested in this also.
Okay.
Why
Right.
don't you check this out?
Mm.
And this is a page that they created on their own
Mhm.
instead of using. It's not. This page doesn't belong to the actual brand.
Right.
But out of 1,000 people, even if 10, 20 people actually buy it and click on that and get a subscription for some other product also,
Mhm.
they will now show on their dashboard to the merchant that we made this much more money for you,
Right. Mhm.
which is pretty cool because
Mm.
at least in the e-commerce space, people just blindly pay for tools that make them money. They don't even
Mm.
care if the tool is buggy or whatever. If
Right.
they're paying X amount of money per month
Mhm.
for the SaaS, and the SaaS is making them 2x or
Mm.
even X plus Y,
Mm.
it's a no-brainer, right? They're
Right.
making money at that point.
Mhm.
They're not losing money. So, and there are other tools also that have done innovative things around how to generate more revenue for
Mm.
the merchants. I think those are the cool things that I've seen. I've seen a lot of other small things also, which are not really. I mean, they don't translate to revenue a lot,
Mhm.
but for example, some people have made this cart shaker app.
Right.
Uh, when you click on a product
Mm.
and now you're checking it out,
Mm.
you've not clicked on checkout yet. You're just looking at the product.
Mhm.
The checkout button starts getting animated and starts moving around.
Okay.
It
Right.
moves around,
Uh,
jumps up and down as if trying to make you click on it.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And that actually, just that distraction sometimes makes people click on it. And
Mm.
if you end up placing an order, the card shaker can now say that because I shook the button, this guy placed an order, so that means I made money for you.
Right. Yeah. So things
So
that apps that build on such subtle psychological,
yeah,
subconscious
yeah,
cues. Right.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That
Then
is
there are these
actually good.
apps that on the side that they just show you these pop-ups that
Hmm.
these many people while you're viewing this product, 10 other people have just purchased this product.
Mhm.
Like increasing FOMO basically
Right.
while you're trying.
Yeah. Isn't that all that's happening with the app space actually? Whether you talk about your social media or whether you talk about even like these business apps that are springing up on the surface, they all tend to sort of, at the basis, at the most fundamental point, they are just trying to leverage uh, how things play out psychologically for people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, and people are coming up with very interesting ways to actually, lead you to buy your product or all those things. So that is amazing in its way, but it's also kind of scary with all the things that you see with, things like social in movies like Social Dilemma and all those. But yes,
it is.
definitely, yes, you could
It's
innovate on top of
amazing
that.
as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, but it's
Yeah.
scary as a consumer.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Because as an entrepreneur, you see the opportunity.
Yes.
But as a
Right.
consumer, it is pretty scary
Yeah.
what people will are willing to do to make you purchase something.
Hmm. That is there. Like Sankalp, now we're going to go back to one point actually, where you mentioned that building these apps has become more like assembling Lego blocks to package a solution. Is it 100% no code, or you still need your coding arsenal at certain times? So, like, what's the boundary there?
It is not, I'm sure you can build products with 100% no code,
Mm-hmm.
but at least the ones that I talked about earlier, Polaris and all, you still need to know how to code. It's not 100% no code by any
Right.
means.
Mm-hmm.
But the barrier to entry has become much lower.
Yeah.
Instead of knowing all the underlying concepts of React, for
Mm-hmm.
example, you only need to know how Polaris works.
Right. Right.
So your learning curve has decreased.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if it would have taken you 3, 4 months to learn how to code from scratch, now it might take you 2 weeks or a month.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But you still need to know a little bit of coding. Even if you use a completely no code solution, I would highly recommend picking up some framework
Mm.
and just learning the basic concepts of how code works in general.
Correct.
I think it's really important because a no code solution is great to start off, but it won't be scalable. Right? If
Right.
if you
Yes.
start getting a lot of traction and your users start asking for a lot of different things, it would be very difficult to accommodate that in
Exactly.
the no code thing that you used.
Yeah.
So while I'm very happy with this no code trend that's happening,
Hmm.
it's enabling people to start something much quickly and with very less learning curve.
Yes.
I I think it should not result in people not wanting to learn how to code at all, because
Yes.
that I don't think that's the right thing.
Yes, but there are also a lot of challenges with no code, right? Like, no code developments are have limitations like there are limitations on unlimited customization, or there's debugging, scalability, like you mentioned, and even security challenges. So, you've already discussed about scalability. With your solutions, with your app, what are some of the limitations that you faced, and how did you evolve past those challenges, these exact challenges like security or unlimited customization? Have you faced them, and if so, how have you evolved past them? These basic
Um,
limitations.
we face so many limitations that I can't even remember
Right.
right now. But so we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning
Hmm.
when we started laying out the base architecture of the app. We used this framework called Next.js, which was not meant for a complex application like this.
Okay.
So, firstly, we are having to work around that.
Hmm.
Every feature that we have to implement, we now have to check if this is possible through Next.js or not.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I think the if you want to avoid things like this, your initial architecture has to be strong.
Hmm.
We made some hiring mistakes in the beginning, and we asked couple of inexperienced people to build the base architecture.
Hmm.
That's biting us still today,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
we face a lot of limitations because of that.
Hmm.
So choosing the right framework, the right stack for your code, these kinds of things, it's okay even if you take a couple of weeks trying to make this decision, but if
Hmm.
you don't do this correctly in the beginning, you'll end up facing a lot of problems. So yeah, firstly, we faced an issue because of choosing the wrong framework. We continue to face a lot of limitations due to that.
Hmm.
And then I remember one of the things we struggled the most was like I mentioned, our tool has all types of support channels, including
Yeah.
email.
Hmm.
And it's hard to believe, but building an email client is really hard.
Uh-huh.
Like it's 2022 and email is like the oldest technology we've had. Even then, figuring out all the nuances within
Hmm.
email is really tough.
Hmm.
Like starting with things like when you send an email to somebody and they reply back, it needs to show under the same thread,
Hmm.
right? It shouldn't be created as a new ticket or a new conversation.
Yes. Yes.
So figuring out how to do that took a lot of time. And then figuring out how to keep our spam score low, that
Hmm.
also took a lot of time. And we're still struggling with that. Actually, that problem is not fully solved
Hmm.
because people use our platform to send emails.
Hmm.
A lot of people, all our customers use our platform to send emails. And if one customer sends a lot of spam, because we are using the same email server underneath,
Hmm.
the whole our whole IP address sort of loses reputation.
Hmm.
So next time we send emails using that IP address, they end up going into the spam
Spam folder.
folder, and
Hmm.
the customer is like, "But we've not sent any
Hmm.
spammy stuff. Why is it going into the spam folder?" Then we had to figure out that you need separate IP addresses for people who are not your paying customers yet, a
Hmm.
separate one for paying ones, a separate one for high valued customers,
Hmm.
and you needed to do this segregation.
Hmm.
But our architecture was not built in a way to allow the segregation. So it took a lot of time to work around that. Um, and then another huge limitation we faced was with the Facebook APIs.
Hmm.
They keep so because we integrate with the Facebook DMs and comments and Instagram DMs and comments, we had to uh, become a developer on the Facebook framework and
Right.
create an app there and connect it to Delight Chat. Facebook's documentations are not great. They don't update them very often.
Hmm.
And they change things up without telling you. And then one day the app just breaks and you don't know why
Hmm.
it's breaking.
Hmm.
You take some time debugging and then you realize that, okay, Facebook has changed their API.
Yeah.
So by virtue of having to integrate with a lot of third party products, we ended up facing a lot of limitations.
Right. Right.
So I guess it would be easier if your product doesn't depend on any other platform and if
Hmm.
it's like a standalone thing.
Hmm.
But again, that's very hard to do in today's world.
Right. And also, since I have been involved with cybersecurity or information security for the most part for the last 2 years, and I have like sort of picked this domain, so I'm always interested in asking this question to people, and especially in your case, how do small businesses take care of cybersecurity? So I think somewhere in one of your blog posts you had mentioned about this DDoS attack that happened on your server by a competitor.
Yeah.
So. Like when it comes to cybersecurity or security in general, is it a part of your framework, strategic framework, or when you're building a small or a business, it is still considered something secondary as you're still gaining momentum? So how is security looked at overall when it comes to small businesses?
To be very honest, it is a secondary thing for us right now
Right.
because there are much more burning problems.
Mm-hmm.
Our system itself is not very stable at the moment because we are suddenly seeing a lot of usage that we didn't have before.
Right.
And usually that continues for a long period of time. So our priority is to make the system stable, uh, to ensure that if we leave the product in its current state for a few months,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to continue running and the MRR will keep growing and it's close to autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when we tend to start looking at security.
Mm-hmm.
But reality is not like that. What usually happens is somebody does some DDoS attack or tries to hack the system or tries to send a bunch of spam emails from system. Then we have to stop whatever we are doing
Mm-hmm.
and just focus on that and rectify that problem.
Mm-hmm.
So our system security has been we've been slowly upgrading it as and when these incidents happen
Mm-hmm.
because you actually won't get to know also what all things you need to
Right.
do until an incident occurs. Like till that DDoS attack happened, we didn't know that we
Yeah.
had to rate limit the requests. Till
Right.
people started to send spam emails, we didn't know that we needed a way to prevent that.
Right. So it's
And
more of
even
a
now,
responsive framework. Like
more
you
of a
respond to an
responsive
incident.
framework.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I guess that's not a great thing uh, for I don't think our customers would be happy to hear that, but that's generally how it goes because it's really hard to predict what all
Mm.
could go wrong in the beginning itself,
Mm. Mm.
and you could pay money to a bunch of these security consultants and get them to solve all these problems, but
Mm.
we don't have enough funds to do that either. And in between, we start getting these emails from various like these independent, these bounty hunters who
Uh-huh.
find faults in your system,
Yes, yes, yes.
and they send you email that we found this vulnerability, you need to fix it,
Uh-huh.
and can you reward us also,
Mm-hmm.
for finding this. So that has been happening, and some of them have been helpful. Some of them were just trying to fish.
Yes, correct.
Uh, so yeah, that's another thing.
Okay. No, that is actually, thank you for that honest. You have been really honest in describing how things are actually going on there. But yes, I always, because I want to understand this myself, like what is the sentiment around security? Like what are people doing? Are people aware enough? What are the challenges that they're facing? So it helps to always start a conversation with someone on this and try to understand in real time what
Yeah, yeah,
actually is happening. But going back to our initial conversation, so you mentioned all the challenges that you have faced while developing your business, and but what are those you could say these key qualities that have enabled you, or you could say that you have, or it could be the strength of your team, it could be your own personal strengths. What are those key qualities that have enabled you to evolve past those challenges? I mean, yes, you face a problem, and then you know it's like you're not problem free, right? Everyone faces their own
yeah,
share of problems, but then how you solve them actually ends up defining you as a business, because that's how you know that okay, you have fought through really tough times and then you've come through them, so now you know your shit. So
yeah.
what are those qualities, what are those pillars that have enabled you, your team, maybe in you and Preetam, your team and all, uh, to wade through those challenges easily, or just wade through those challenges?
Right. So, firstly, I think we we have a decent hold on how to manage chaos
Mhm.
by virtue of all the startups we worked for in the past, and in these almost 2 years of running Delight Chat.
Right.
Because hundreds of things are breaking every day. Customers are asking for hundreds of things.
Mhm.
Uh, we also need to focus on. We also have to make sure that we have enough runway to do everything that we plan to do.
Mhm.
So at any given time, we have 10 problems to look at easily, which creates a lot of chaos. So we started doing these daily stand-ups now, which we didn't have before.
Mhm.
We didn't think that was needed before, but ever since we started doing those, it had two effects. Firstly, we had a good idea of what we were going to do
Mhm.
throughout the day.
Mhm.
Uh, when there are 10 problems to look at, you can't look at all of them. So you
Mhm.
have to ruthlessly prioritize.
Yes.
And we would spend 10 minutes in the day in the morning to just prioritize three things
Mhm.
out of those 10 things.
Mhm.
And then we would tell ourselves that on the remaining seven things, no matter how catastrophic they are, we won't think about those right now. We'll try to remove them from our brain and then
Mhm.
only focus on those three things.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then at the end of the day, if those three things get done, it felt good because we felt like we are a little closer to reducing our chaos.
Mhm. Yeah.
So the ability to ruthlessly prioritize is one quality that we developed over the years, and it's helped us and it continues to help us
Mhm.
in a lot of things.
Mhm.
So that is one thing. The other thing is the ability to find the right person inside our circle
Yes.
who's capable of solving the problem that we are currently facing.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of investors, we have advisors, we have friends.
Mhm.
All of these are people that that could potentially help us solve a problem.
Mhm.
And whenever we face a problem, we instead of thinking we should only figure out how to solve this, we should look up ourselves, try to do research, and look at other people's code, and just figure out how to solve this.
Mhm.
Our first or the first step that we take is generally not that. We never think that we should only solve this problem.
Right.
What we do first is we see if there is a SaaS tool that already solves this problem,
Correct.
and if we just throw money at this problem, it will go away
Hmm.
by paying for that SaaS tool. That's the first thing we look at. So we start Googling SaaS tools for X.
Hmm.
And if we find one that solves our problem, great. We immediately pay for it, integrate it. Not immediately, we make sure that it's a stable product that's been around for a while. We see which other companies use it. If we see a lot of green flags, we go ahead,
Mhm.
pay for the tool, and we move on.
Right.
If we don't find a SaaS tool that already does it, then we start looking at our network of people and find out who's the best suited to solve this. If
Mhm.
it's a tech problem, then we look at the people who are good at tech in our circle. Like we have a lot of investors who are CTOs in their companies,
Mhm.
so we reach out to them, set up a call with them, explain them the problem, and uh, when they suggest a few solutions.
Hmm.
Everybody suggests a few solutions. Then we look at those solutions. We look at our existing limitations,
Right.
and we filter those solutions. And now we have 3, 4 leads that we can look at, and we follow those leads.
Mhm.
So I guess in terms of to put it in simple words, the quality here would be to the ability to know that you can't solve this problem yourself.
Mhm.
Either pay
Yes.
for somebody else who's done it or find somebody else who's good at this, but don't sit and try and solve this yourself.
Yeah. Mhm.
Uh, this is another thing.
That's actually the
And
first time I'm hearing someone say that, actually, because a lot of people, who believe in, what is that, wishful thinking, will say, oh, you should get everything done by yourself. You should be, but, I think
no,
you highlight a very, very important point and a message to people that, leveraging your contacts, or having the right people in your circle, and leveraging those. I'm sorry, I'm using the word leveraging, but it's in, like, we are speaking in a
no, it's
professional
true.
sense,
It's
right? But
yeah, yeah, yeah,
leveraging
yeah.
those in order to solve a specific problem or anything that you might face is actually key to growth and momentum. So,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you for highlighting that actually, because not a lot of people would say that.
Yeah, no worries. Because we generally we always tell ourselves that we don't know anything,
Yeah.
and if we're gonna sit and try and figure it out, either we'll come up with a half-baked solution,
Hmm.
or we'll end
Yes.
up spending a lot of time coming up with a good solution which somebody already came up with. So now we lost time, right?
Hmm.
And
Yes.
that's not a smart thing to do.
Right.
So yeah, that's one thing that we're proud of, that we've developed over the years. Yeah. Apart from that, we've there's another skill that we've not really developed very well, but
Hmm.
we're in the process of it, and it's taking much longer than we thought.
Hmm.
Is the ability to gauge somebody, well, like at the time of hiring,
Hmm.
the ability to gauge if that person is the right person for you to work with or not.
Right.
Even whether it's a full-time person or a freelancer,
Hmm.
there are these inherent things that can't really put in words, but when you speak to them, you get the sense
Right.
that okay, this person would be
Hmm.
great to work with. Sometimes you meet people who are really good at in their domain,
Hmm.
but are not the right cultural fit
Exactly.
to work with.
Yes.
And earlier, we didn't have the ability to find out if that person. We would only look at their tech capability or marketing or whatever domain we're hiring them
Right.
for. We would only look at that. We would discard all the other things. But after all the mistakes we made, we realized that the other things are actually more important, because even if the person is not that great in their domain, they can learn.
They
And
can
like I
learn.
said, there's always Google. You don't need to
Hmm.
know the solution to everything.
Right.
You just need to find somebody who knows what to Google at what point of time, and that usually solves the problem.
Right.
So we developed this sort of a sense when we talk to people, where we get to know if we should work with them or not.
Yeah, this makes complete sense because even now that I'm leaving my former company, I was put in charge for actually interviewing a lot of people, and I think I conducted around 10 to 12. And you would find these people who are trained specifically in one skill, but they don't know anything about matlab, they lack
Right,
communication skills, or even, if you sort of ask them something else which they don't know, how do they arrive at that answer? So over the time I discussed this with my the person who put me in charge for this, and I'm like, dude, I am not really satisfied. I don't think that these people can represent a brand like us, sitting like at a client facing role. So
right.
we were like, okay, she was like, yeah, because these tech skills that we were essentially hiring for were highly trainable. Like, trust me, because
Hmm.
I was the same. I had been put up for the same tech skills, and I learned them within like 4 days. I'm not even kidding. So that's like. These are highly trainable. They can be learned and acquired really easily. But all those other things, when I sat at the client with the client, I actually learned all those things because we were supposed to talk with 7 geographical zones, and now there are people of different accents and they have different understanding of the things. How do you communicate to them? And I think I
Right,
learned all of that, not only communication but all of those things, being a little smart, thinking long term, all those things I learned while sitting there. And it just felt like, people came with those specific skills, but they didn't come up with a comprehensive skill set
right,
of all those other things that we often discard because we're only looking for these
correct.
things.
Yeah,
So I think
yeah,
this is also one of the lessons that we learned. And after the first half of the first week or 2 weeks after these interviews, we're like, okay, we're only going to look for these things. We're going to
right.
gauge them basis these skills. And then you won't believe 15, 20 people we interviewed, but we only sort of passed them. We only passed 2 of them. So that was a little, yeah, this is a harsh learning for us also. But then, yes,
That's
definitely.
great though, because it took us almost a year and a bunch of bad hires to come to this realization. So I would say you're much ahead in that sense. You realize it within a couple of weeks.
Mhm. So, uh, this Sankalp, what are you currently working on with Delight Chat? If you don't mind disclosing what's on the roadmap, and also somewhere you
Yeah.
mentioned that you like putting multiple eggs in your basket or eggs in multiple baskets, something like that. So, what are your plans ahead? Do you wish to do anything apart from Delight Chat, or what's the overall roadmap? What does the overall roadmap look like?
Right. So Delight Chat's roadmap right now, very simple. We're focusing on WhatsApp marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to do everything possible to make money for people through WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is to do this by building as little as possible. Because we had this idea to build a journey builder of sorts with like a comprehensive UI. So something
Right.
like Web Engage has, if you know
Mm.
about Web Engage, where you can drag and drop stuff. You can say that this user did this, then did not do this, then send
Oh,
them this
okay.
message.
Uh-huh.
And but we quickly realized that building something like that is going to be like building a whole new startup within a
Mm.
startup.
Mm.
So now it's about finding the easiest way to achieve the same thing,
Mm.
but without this fancy UI.
Mm.
Maybe by using just a form where you configure everything that all the conditions that would require you to send a WhatsApp message.
Right.
So we're going to focus on that. We are going to focus on building maybe a preliminary chatbot of sorts,
Mm.
which would take away a lot of pain. Because right now what happens is we have this feature where you can send a broadcast message, like I mentioned. You can
Mm.
upload a CSV.
Mm.
Now, if people upload a CSV with 1 lakh contacts
Mm.
and send them messages, most of them are bound to reply.
Right.
So now their tickets have increased. The volume
Mm.
of their tickets have increased.
Mm.
So their next requirement is, how do I reduce some of these tickets automatically
Okay. Mm-hmm.
using a bot?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to focus on that. We are going to build a basic CRM,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to keep track of what a particular user did at what point of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've placed so and so orders, they've created this much of revenue for you,
Mm.
the timeline of everything that they've done,
Right.
which we can show our customers right there when they're talking to that particular customer. We'll show it on the side, who this customer is and what their history is. That's something people have been asking for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's also there on our roadmap. But yeah, the primary thing is to build more WhatsApp automation features,
Right.
get feedback from customers after we build them as to what more they need, and using that feedback to enhance those features.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the roadmap for I would say this entire year.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but before doing that, we plan to take a couple of months making our product stable,
Right.
because so last year around end of December is when we decided to switch gears and take the WhatsApp route,
Mm-hmm.
and then we ended up building the first version within a couple of weeks.
Mm.
So there are a lot of issues in the system. There's a lot of bottlenecks. It was built in a very hacky way, and
Mm.
now that the usage has increased a lot, those hacks, they helped us come till this far, but uh, we've hit the limit on those.
Right.
So we're going to spend a couple of months just streamlining that, removing all these bottlenecks, and making the system very, very stable. Right now, it feels like there is a dam that's about to burst. There are holes coming out of the dam, and we are literally holding them with our own hands right now.
Yeah.
What we want to do is reinforce this dam with some cement and some metal rods or something like that,
Yeah.
to give you an analogy.
Mm.
That's so we'll take 2-3 months to do that, and then after that we'll build these WhatsApp automation features.
Mm.
That's the roadmap as far as the light chat is concerned. And regarding what you said about the other thing about putting eggs in multiple baskets,
Yeah.
my perspective on that has changed actually.
Uh-huh.
Back when in 2021, when things were going really bad and we were almost like depressed with the light chat's progress,
Mm-hmm.
Preetam and I started working on something on the side called Daily Habits,
Okay.
which is a habit tracker.
Yeah. Did
And
see
we're
that.
like, okay, if one thing doesn't work, let's have multiple things running on the side, and one of them is bound to work.
Mm-hmm.
How wrong were we? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't take us much time to realize that no matter what you build, it takes bandwidth. You still have to spend the same
Yes.
amount of effort It's not like you can build something, leave it out there, and it's gonna work on its own.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to put effort in talking to the people who are using that product, and then enhancing it further using their feedback, figuring out some pricing model which works. If people aren't willing to pay for it, so for example, we realize that people aren't willing to pay for a habit tracker tool.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You can't sell that like a SaaS. And the only way to make money out of something like that is maybe to sell a course
Mm-hmm.
or to sell a physical product like a journal or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of effort. And then we started to regroup and we thought it's going to take a lot of effort to build anything.
Correct.
We might as well focus on the one thing that has the highest probability of
Mm-hmm.
success, and
Succeeding.
the one with the highest ROI,
Mm-hmm.
which is Delight Chat only, which is what we are working on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of diluting some of our time to work on something else which may bring in some amount of reward,
Mm-hmm.
versus using all our time into our main thing, uh, which has more probability of the reward being much higher. And I wouldn't say higher probability of success, but the ROI would be much higher
Right.
if it succeeds.
Yes.
So we decided to check everything else, not work on multiple things at the same time. That's why I even stopped writing blog posts.
Mm-hmm.
I've not written anything in a while because that was also taking up bandwidth. I would
Yeah.
spend almost the whole of Saturday
Mm.
writing the blog, and then on Sunday I would edit it and publish. So on the weekends would also go away.
Yes.
Um, then I decided to not spend too much time on anything else until Delight Chat starts
Delight chat.
working. It's reached a stable position where it is, for the most part, on autopilot.
Mm.
And if not, we have enough people in the team to make sure that things are working fine, even if me and Preetam are not in the picture 24/7.
Yes.
So the goal is to reach that stage before we can even consider having multiple baskets or multiple eggs or whatever is the
Yes.
right
The right
term
phrase.
here.
Yeah. So I think the winding up question there, Sankalp, would be this. I like asking because I've been reading this book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution by Klaus Schwab, the chairman of the World Economic Forum. So it's a very interesting book, and it talks about the fourth industrial revolution that we're going through with these latest technologies like gene editing or autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles, or new materials, or even blockchain technologies. And he describes that
Right.
how the physical world is actually sort of tying up with the virtual world, and how that can benefit our society, sort of like in a way that it brings a lot of changes in it, unprecedented changes, but then it could also prove to be detrimental if we are not really ahead of the game on this one. So round way, if I were to ask you, what are uh, some of the technologies that excite you the most, what would they be?
Um, well, to be very honest, all the technologies that I'm hearing of these days, they're scaring me more than exciting me. Especially
Yeah.
this metaverse thing going on.
Right.
It's scary.
Mm. Mm.
I don't want. I'm sure it's going to happen because uh, Facebook makes these moves knowing that something is about to happen,
Right.
and now they're like all we are going all in on VR. So I'm sure VR is going to take off in a big way,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not particularly excited about it.
Yeah.
I think I'm excited about some aspects of VR.
Mm-hmm.
For example, there's VR for fitness.
Mm-hmm.
You can wear the device, which is now
Yes.
light enough, and you have a boxing simulator, you have a tennis simulator, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use VR to keep yourself fit. Where in normal circumstances you would need a tennis court or a boxing ring or
Mm-hmm.
stuff,
Right.
and that's going away now. So
Mm-hmm.
that part of VR excites me. I'm definitely going to be a customer for something for a fitness based VR. But at the same time, the other aspects of VR scare me, like
Mm.
the part where you're just gonna wear the headset and sit all day and do
All
nothing,
day.
and just
Yes.
everything you're doing is inside the virtual world. That
Yes.
part scares me. Uh, and then Apart from that, the, I think one major thing going on right now is Web 3.0, which
Yeah.
everyone's talking about,
Uh-huh.
these NFTs and tokens and
NFTs,
stuff.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't excite me exactly, but I see some sort of a valid use case for
Mm-hmm.
Web 3.0. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't know what it is yet. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to find out what it is. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
waiting to see if when somebody comes up with a good use case for this. Because right now, whoever talks about Web 3.0, they're like, oh, you can do this with Web 3.0, you can do that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay,
What have you
but
done?
what
Yeah.
have you done and how is this going to make my life easier?
Mm-hmm.
No one's explained that to me yet.
Mm-hmm.
I can buy an NFT for $1 million, but how is that
Yes.
enhancing society as a whole
Makes sense. Yes.
is not clear to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there is some very real use case hidden somewhere in Web 3.0, and I'm excited to find out what that is.
Mm.
So there's that, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Not able to remember off the top of my head what other new technologies are out there.
There's blockchain, and I think that has gained quite a lot of momentum now. But
Yeah, I think like
then,
blockchain also comes within I would
yeah,
say within the Web 3.0 spectrum as a
yeah,
whole,
smart
the whole
contracts. Yeah.
decentralized smart contracts and stuff. But yeah, then
No, that's okay. That's yeah. But actually, it makes a lot of sense, whatever you've said. We are still yet to assess, what detriment they could bring. But a lot of the concern that a lot of people have that these things, these technologies are highly scalable. Now, we have to ensure that they smoothly integrate with our fabric of life. For example, any new innovation comes like electricity came then a lot there were concerns, or even driving cars when vehicles hit up the road. It actually was like I was surprised to find out that there used to be a concern for a lot of people because of the accidents and all those things
right,
that could happen because of that. But then it actually smoothly integrated because of a lot of actions by authorities, you could say a lot of actions by a lot of stakeholders that actually helped it sink in with the fabric of life very smoothly. And I
right,
think one of the biggest concerns with these technologies are they're highly scalable and fast. I'm sorry. So, that enabling that smooth transition will become even more important in this case. Otherwise, we could actually end up in a dystopian world. So,
yeah, yeah,
we are yet to see what's there because we cannot fully gauge the impact. But a lot of people are, sort of positive. A lot of people are like, okay, we are kind of neutral about it because anything can happen from here on. So,
true.
yes, that's there. But anyways, Sankalp, I think that's going to be the last of it. Thank you for coming up on the show. And actually, I had a pretty comprehensive, conversation on all these things with you. You didn't not only paint a rosy picture like, okay, these are the benefits that come with opening your own business, but yeah, these are also other things that you need to look at. This is like something that I was trying to uh, I was expecting from the conversation that you could actually paint a very comprehensive picture for all of us. And you did that with great success. And I think you have touched
That's
upon
good to
all the
know. I
aspects.
tried my best.
Yes, yes. You did touch up on all the aspects. And I think this can give our viewers a fair idea of what things are and how do they want to go about it from here on. And listening to people who are innovating something new is always something that I admire, love the most. And it was a great conversation with you, and I would definitely love to stay on touch with your progress. What you guys are doing, what progress you've made, what other things that you have planned in your roadmap. Have you been able to achieve those? I
Right.
definitely love that. I love reading your blog post because the last week that I was researching on you to sort of prepare for the material for this podcast, I looked through all your blog posts and it was so refreshing to read those. Like, yeah, these guys are actually on to something. And it's definitely something that I would urge a lot of people to look at if they're remotely interested in this space. So yes,
I
thank you
mean,
for coming,
thanks
Sankalp.
a lot for that, and thanks for having me. It's I've actually really enjoyed this because I've not so far in a long time just sat down and dumped all of my thoughts for an hour.
Yes.
more than an hour actually, and
Mhm.
it feels good. Feels like my brain is empty now, and
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks
it's a
for
good
that.
feeling.
I
Yeah,
think that's where my goal has been achieved, right?
great.
Yes. So thank you, Sankalp. Let's stay in touch in the offline
Yeah,
world.
absolutely.
And yes, thank you for coming. It was a great talk.
Great. Thanks a lot for having